Hello viewers at home, thank you once again for joining us on this very episode of Lunch Guide. My name is Chef Andy, your host, and on this particular day we are going to be going with a beautiful going green theme. We are going to be doing some very beautiful vegetarian and healthy dishes for some of you who may be looking at some good options for your vegetarian lunches. And on this particular episode I'm going to be focusing on a very simple vegetarian pilau, which we're going to be also pairing up with a very simple kachumbari. But before we get that far, we're going to start by introducing the ingredients, which I'll start from the very front. So from the bowl right at the very end, I've got some cloves there and some fennel seeds. We're also going to be using some cardamom pods, some coriander seeds, and 1 piece of bay leaf. We're also going to be using some chaat masala, some garam masala, about a teaspoon of some cinnamon sticks, and some dana jeera there. I'm also going to be infusing this with some hazelnut oil, but you can alternatively use vegetable oil. You'll also require about a tablespoon of tomato paste, 1 large clove of garlic, and some few pieces there of some ginger root. You'll also require some beautiful basmati rice, about 1 onion and 1 tomato for your kachumbari, and also you'll also require 2 tomatoes and 1 onion for your mixture. You're also going to be including 1 red bell pepper, about half a cup of some frozen peas. You'll also require some very fresh coriander leaves, some salt, about half a carrot that's already peeled, and of course some water that you'll be cooking your rice in, and last and finally some pepper for giving it that little bit of kick. But before we get to that point, we're going to start off by giving you this chance to freshen up. Grab your pens and papers if you're taking notes, and when we come back we're going to dive into this very simple dish. Don't touch that dial, we'll be right back. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. For those of you who are just catching up with us, we're about to start this very simple process of making a pilau, which is a very common dish here in Kenya, particularly from the coastal region. For those of you who've actually indulged in it and you may not know how to do it yourselves, this is definitely the show for you. So we're going to start off very simply by working with a few of the herbs and spices that we're going to be using. So I'm just going to grab those and move them to the side. And we're going to start off very easily by just bringing the flavors up. So this is a very simple technique. I always actually like to heat my spices up on a hot pan. This will actually allow for you to really bring up the flavors. So start off by adding your cinnamon sticks. Next, add a teaspoon of some coriander seeds. We're also going to infuse about 3 pieces of cardamom pods. So very simply, just break those open with the tip of your fingers, just allowing for that cardamom to really penetrate. To that, we're going to add our cloves and our fennel seeds. And last but not least, our piece of bay leaf. And all you're going to do is toss those in a pan until you get that nice beautiful fragrance of all those beautiful herbs coming through. And you can actually alternate this for some powdered spices if you actually have the powdered variety. But if you actually have some of the raw ones, they actually give a very good permeating flavor, and they actually really give a nice beautiful finish to your dish. Right, so proceed to do so just about until the point where you begin to get that nice, beautiful aroma coming through, and you should actually be able to see also a bit of smoke coming from your pan. And once that is done, proceed to move that to a pestle and mortar. You can also alternatively just pour this onto a board and just crush them really hard with a mallet. So once those are in there, using your mortar, just proceed to crush everything together. And of course, making sure to go in one circular motion. And proceed to do so right until the point you've got most of your herbs broken up completely. And once that is complete, we're going to proceed to the first process of cooking. So basically, this is the fragrancing part of the dish. So begin by turning on your pan, and into that add a tablespoon of hazelnut oil. Remember, for those of you who may not be able to find or have some hazelnut oil in your kitchens, you can alternatively use some olive oil or some vegetable oil. It really won't make that much of a difference. So next up, proceed to add all your herbs into the pot. And we're going to proceed after that to add some of our garlic. So I'm just going to begin by breaking up that clove. So very, very simple way of peeling garlic for those of you who may not know how to do so. Begin by knocking down the garlic on your board with the side of your knife. This should allow for you to expose the garlic clove right on the inside, and it will also aid you in peeling it a little faster. So proceed to remove the skins. And I'm going to be using about 3 or 4 pieces of some large garlic cloves. Right, once those are peeled, proceed to add those to your mortar once more and discard the rest. Next up, we're going to add a bit of our ginger. So I'm just going to proceed to slice a bit of that raw skin there, exposing the inner part of the ginger root. And all you're going to do is first chop that into some nice long strips and proceed to chop that finely. Proceed to add that to your mortar, and very, very importantly, pay attention to your pot. At this point, you will actually be able to get that nice, beautiful flavor coming through. And once you get to that point, you can actually pull your pot a little bit away from the heat. Give it a bit of time for that smoke to actually die down. And while you do so, proceed to pound your garlic and ginger together. Proceed to add that to your pot. Once your pot is a little cooler now, proceed to push back onto the heat and proceed to mix everything together. While allowing those to quickly fragrant, just proceed to grab your tomato paste and add 1 large teaspoon. And proceed to mix once more, allowing for the garlic and ginger to combine in flavor and for the tomato paste to quickly mix in with everything else. And once that is done, we're going to proceed to add our powdered herbs. So I'm going to start off with some cinnamon, some chaat masala, last but not least some cumin powder. At this stage, you can add a little bit of water to your pot. This will allow for you to combine your ingredients a little faster, also allowing for you to break up your tomato paste. And this should continue to cook into a nice pasty consistency, if you can be able to see that from the cameras. Now proceed to cook the paste. Remember, this is particularly where your pilau will gain a lot of the color. It will actually gain a bit of character from this particular process. So very important to continue doing so at low heat, proceeding to cook for anywhere between 2 to 4 minutes. Now while that continues, we're going to proceed to start chopping up our ingredients here, beginning with our red onion. So for this, you're going to chop into some nice half moon shapes. Proceed to do so for the other half. And of course, particularly for those of you who may not be big fans of pilau, it is actually a very, very good and healthy option to having an alternative to white rice. And it is also a very good addition to your recipe, or even the ingredients that, some of the ingredients that we used are also a very good addition to your pantry, particularly for the reasons that some of these herbs are actually very fragrant. They're actually very good for you. Some of them actually give a very, very good addition to your health, particularly with anything related to bodily fluids, particularly even your digestive system. So I will recommend, if you're not a big fan of using some of the herbs and spices we use today, you can still also look into your pantry or walk around a few of the supermarkets, and you should be able to find some beautiful options that work for you. So next up, add your onions and proceed to turn up your heat a little higher. And next up, proceed to dice your tomatoes, beginning by first of all cutting them into quarters. And next up into about 1-inch chunks. Proceed to add that to your pot. And now proceed to continue mixing together. And now this will continue to fry continuously, of course proceeding to mix with a spoon, allowing for you to break your tomato chunks a little faster. While that continues, we're going to proceed to prepare some of our other ingredients. So I'll start off by peeling my bell pepper. So very simply begin by always coring off the top of your pepper. This is a very simple technique to enable you not to waste most of it. And using your spoon, proceed to cut right around the core. Of course, making sure to cut right between the center and the sides of the pepper. And you can remove that and discard. And proceed to slice that into quarters. And using your spoon, your knife, very importantly, be sure to always take out the membrane on the inside. Remember, that actually becomes very bitter when cooking, so very important to take it out at this stage. And you can actually save that for your vegetable stock. You can also use that in some soup. So if you're going to be making anything else, you can actually reserve those. But we are not going to be using them for this recipe. And now proceed to julienne your red pepper. Of course, making sure to pay attention to your pot. Give it a nice mix once more. You should actually remember to always reserve a bit of liquid or some stock for this particular process. Remember, if your tomatoes are also not very, very ripe, it should actually take a little longer for you to break up the chunks, and the water will actually aid in doing so for you. Right, so we're just going to allow that to continue cooking down and proceed to chop everything else. So remember, particularly for vegetables that are fast in cooking, particularly for red pepper or anything in relation to peas, these are particularly good to add towards the end of your dish. So you're going to begin by chopping all this and mixing them together. Right, once your bell pepper is done, you can push that to the side of your board. Proceed to grab your carrot and very simply begin by slicing one very nice thin wedge from the edge, allowing you to actually now proceed to chop your carrot a little easier. Proceed to turn it to one end and proceed to chop as you did from the beginning. And now finish off by finishing those into some very thin julienne pieces. Chopping as you did to the very end. And this is a particularly very simple technique of allowing for you to actually get a nice beautiful chop from your vegetables. And of course always allows for you to get a nice consistent size. So as you notice, if you can be able to see there, you can be able to see the nice small cubes of red bell pepper. Very important to chop your carrots just the same size to allow for cooking of the same timing. And of course, very importantly, this also adds a nice beautiful presentation and color to your dish at the very end, which you'll be able to see later on. Alright, so once your carrots and bell peppers are chopped up, proceed to add those to your pot. Of course, by now you should be able to have a nice, beautiful, thicker consistency, and your tomatoes are started to break up. Proceed to add the peppers and carrots. And this is basically in a ratio of 1 to 2. So 1 ratio carrots to 2 ratio bell pepper. You can also alternatively use a green bell pepper for this recipe. Right, so give that a nice mix through. And proceed to add your frozen peas. And now proceed to mix everything together in your pot. And now once that's done, you're now going to proceed to add your last and final ingredient to this particular step, which is your rice. So I'm going to be using about half a cup of basmati rice. So this is particularly rice that has been store-bought, so this has been cleaned, and it's very, very much good for use directly without any cleaning. So the reason why we are not soaking the rice for this particular process is we do want it to really absorb most of the flavors in the pot. And remember, being a pilau dish, you are going to be cooking this for quite a bit of time. So very important that you give your rice quite a bit of time before you add your liquid to allow for the ingredients to mellow in really nicely. For your beginner ingredients like your garlic, ginger, and all your herbs to really marry into the rice. And now once that's done, very simply, we're going to proceed to add 1 whole cup of water. For this particular recipe, you can also reserve some vegetable or some chicken stock. It will not make a difference, but it will actually bring a much more beautiful, nutritious finish to your dish. So add your cup of water. Proceed to mix that through. And now all you're going to do is allow that to continue to cook covered, bring it to the simmer and allow for it to continue cooking until the liquid is completely absorbed. But before we get to the last and final step of showing you what this will look like, we are going to refresh the stage a little bit. We're going to take a short commercial break, allowing you to freshen up. And when we come back, I'll show you the last and final process, which is the very simple kachumbari and the plating of this very, very simple dish. Please don't touch that dial. We'll be right back. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. If you're just tuning in, you've just been missing out on a very simple but very beautiful dish. And I will also remind you that all the work that we do on the show, particularly, you can be able to catch up with this and more on our YouTube page. So do us also check that out. There's plenty more for you to actually catch up on and learn from. But for this particular dish, we have come to the last and final stage. So we're going to start off by just breaking up our rice with a pasta spoon really quickly. As this just to allow for the rice to air out and to fluff up a little bit. Actually, the process is called fluffing. And once that is done, we're going to proceed to just scoop that into a bowl here. Now, some of you may actually have a lot of other different techniques of plating, so you are not limited to plating the way we have on the show. Remember, this is just for your viewers, preference. Right, so just to scoop a bit of that bay leaf in there. And as you can see, a nice, beautiful, very quick to make vegetarian pilau. But now last and finally, we are going to get to the last and final part, which was the kachumbari. So very, very simply, it's a very, very simple local salad. Very good accompaniment to pilau as well. And the pungency of the onions really gives it a nice lift. So proceed by chopping your onions very, very quickly into some half moon shapes. So I'm using a medium-sized onion. A small onion will also do if you're making this for one person. Let's discard the roots. Now we're going to proceed to add our ingredients into a mixing bowl. So you can use any particular bowl of your choice. Proceed also to quarter one medium-sized tomato, and using a sharp knife, proceed to just get the seeds out. Right, once that's done, grab your tomato wedges and proceed to chop that into some very fine julienne. Mix that into the bowl with your onions. But before we proceed that much, we're going to chop up some fresh coriander leaves. So very, very simply, reconstitute them on your board. Proceed to chop as finely as possible. Simple as that. Add that to your bowl. And now for the last and final step, very importantly to remember to season. So generous pinch of salt and an extra crush of some black peppercorns. Now proceed to mix that in the bowl very, very quickly. And you can also add a bit of chili to this if you prefer a bit of heat in your kachumbari. You can also add a bit of lemon for a nice, beautiful citrusy finish to it, and also that will also allow for you to really lift up the flavors. But for this particular recipe, because we do have a very, very beautiful fragrant rice, we're also just going to pair that with a very, very simple salad. So very simply, once that's mixed through, proceed to place that right on the side of your plate. So that should actually be a nice, beautiful portion for one. It could actually be a very good average portion for one young child. And to this point, we've come to the last and final stage. I hope you've learned something that you can bring to your own very home kitchens at home. I do hope you've also had some fun with us today, and I hope you're very much going to be looking forward to trying this very simple dish on your own at home. But I will also remind you, we do appreciate your feedback or any comments pertaining the show. Do also remember we are on Facebook. Do check out the videos, leave any comments, any inquiries. We're always glad to hear from you. But from the show today, I'm going to bid you farewell. I'm going to also ask you to enjoy your lunch today. And until the next episode, my name is Chef Andy, bidding you farewell. See you soon.